Hi everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Beckman's Breakdowns, where I take a look at World Tour tournaments of Super 500 and above, and just give my honest, humble opinions. This week it's all about the China Masters Super 750, the last World Tour event which had points going towards the World Tour finals, so as a result there was plenty for the players to fight for. But this episode isn't just going to be about that, because as the week transpired, many things happened. There is so much to go through, and I could tell just by the questions that you all kindly put towards me that a lot of you have a lot of questions on a lot of different things. So I think rather than me going on any longer now with an introduction, I think we just need to get right into it. Let's start off episode 5 of Beckman's Breakdowns, the China Masters Super 750. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about is the China Masters was the first tournament where the BWF implemented a new rule, and it's a new rule that goes around the use of cold spray. Okay, so to explain this simply, before a player or pair could call on the doctor, the tournament doctor, to come on, and that was usually for two reasons. One, it was for a blood injury, that was usually called by the umpire, to be honest, but the main one that players did was because they had whatever injury they had, whether it was their quad, their back, anything, for the doctor to administer cold spray. The BWF have now got rid of that rule. Players can only administer cold spray in the mid-game intervals or at the end of each game, and they have to administer it themselves. So doctors can no longer be called onto court to administer cold spray. I think this is in general a good thing, as there was quite a lot of abuse of that rule going on. Obviously that does affect players that have a genuine injury, a genuine issue that cold spray could help with. But I think there was just too much of players like either wanting to kill their opponent's momentum or whatever, going, I need the tournament doctor, get some spray, it gives them a few minutes, because it does take quite a while for this to come on. You know, they've got to get the tournament referee, then the doctor, then the spray, and yeah, it did get a little bit ludicrous at times. So I think by eliminating that, yes, it does affect people, the players that are genuine, but I think there was more the people that weren't genuine. So an interesting rule. When I first saw it, I was a little bit confused by it. I wasn't quite clear on it. I thought, well, what if a player isn't allowed to go, I need cold spray, but I need the doctor, and then the doctor, it basically comes on and says, well, they need cold spray. Is then it allowed? And it turned out that no, that isn't allowed either. The doctor can only come on to treat a blood injury and to assess the player. They can't treat the player, basically to determine whether the player or pair can continue with the match. That happened in the semi-finals with Shi Yu Qi, literally at 1-love in the second game, calling on the doctor, asking for cold spray, even though he had cold spray in his own bag, which he used earlier in the match. I'm not sure whether that was to, genuine or not, because it was only at 1-love. But yeah, the tournament referee came on, even though the umpire tried to explain to him that that was no longer the rule. Doctor came on with the tournament referee and basically walked straight back off. So that situation with Shetty kind of completely answered any queries that I had that, well, what happens if they just call the doctor on and the doctor then decides that cold spray is needed? No, the doctor can't do that. One thing, though, clearly that hadn't happened for this tournament is I don't think the BWF made this very clear to the players. Well, I say that, it might have been that they did, and then the managers of those players, so the coaches or the team managers, didn't then relay the information on. Not quite sure where the fault lies on that, because there were a few players throughout the week that asked for the doctor for the cold spray and they were told they're not allowed, and there was definitely confusion. Yeah, okay, so yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear yours. So the last time that we saw the world #1 men's singles player Shi Yu Qi was at the China Open, and that was quite hard to watch, as he lost incredibly easily to Anthony Ginting. And it wasn't just the fact that he lost really badly or that he had said that he was still suffering from injuries. It was more that he just didn't look happy on court. He didn't look like he wanted to be there. He lacked motivation. I kind of get it. I've been in that situation myself with my own playing career, obviously not at that level, but it's just really hard when you're on that court and the last thing you want to be is there. You just want to go away. And so that was really difficult to watch that. And then since that tournament, where afterwards he had said that he wasn't sure about his future within the sport and he just didn't seem very happy. He then came back in an internal tournament within China. It was a team competition where I believe it's to basically decide the seedings for the national games. He had to be stretchered off as he was severely ill. I think I can't remember the name of the illness, but anyway, he had to be stretchered off the court. I won't go into why he actually had to play that match in the first place, but the crux of it was that he had to be stretchered off and was very unwell. So, with the fact that the last time we saw him, he really didn't look like a player that was very unsure of his future and just looked incredibly down, to then next time we see him, he's being stretchered off. So wasn't it great that at this week we saw a motivated, looking pretty fit and excited to be back on court, and a well-playing Shi Yu Qi. I'm not going to go into what his level actually was. For me, it was just amazing to watch him play with the kind of motivation and inspiration that that should be expected of these players. He was fighting for points. He looked happy when he won. He wasn't getting down. It was just, I wouldn't say it was Shi Yu Qi at his absolute best, but it was a really good showing from him, and it was brilliant. And it kind of gives a hope that, he isn't done with badminton, that he looks like he's keen to continue, and a lot of people around the world are going to be happy by that. I certainly am. He's a fantastic player, but more than that, it was just really good to see him happy on court, fighting for every point, showing kind of emotion on court, and just playing, showing us the kind of brilliance that he's known for. So going from what we saw of him last time on the World Tour to this, it's like night and day, and wasn't it fantastic? I'm really happy to see Shi Yu Qi back on the World Tour, but back happier than he was before, looking like his injuries weren't too much of an issue for him. And just thoroughly enjoying his badminton. Fantastic to see. Another couple of players that made their return to court, this time from a slightly longer hiatus, was India's men's doubles pair of Satwik Sairaj Rankireddy and Chirag Shetty. This was their first tournament back since the Olympic Games, so it's been quite a long period of time off for them. I believe it was mainly because of their coach before, Matthias Bo, had decided that he no longer wanted to continue coaching, that they wanted to wait until they got themselves a new coach. Although at this tournament, I'm not sure the coaches they had were the coaches they're going to have full time. I think they're still trying to find out who their coaches are. That might be untrue. If anyone knows if the two players that were behind their court throughout their week in China are their new coaches, then please do correct me, but I don't think they are. I think another reason was, I believe Rankireddy had some issues with his shoulder, so I think there was a little bit of recovery time. Plus, after the Olympics, a big build-up, they were one of the favourites, they didn't quite deliver. Just some time away to kind of reset, recover, find their new goals, and then obviously a little bit of training to get themselves back in, and they've come back and wanting to come back when they're fully ready. And they played very well. It was a great comeback. They reached the semi-finals, losing to the pair that won, Jin Yong and Seo Kang, and that was in a close game. They had chances to win that as well. For me, watching them play, it did seem at times like they hadn't been away. They were the usual excitement that we usually expect, the big attacks, the very organised kind of play that I think Matthias Bo instilled in them. Great link-up play, they're able to kind of utilise their strengths well. Having said that though, they definitely did lack a little bit of sharpness, I think, within match play, which is to be expected, and that was something that was exposed a little bit in their first round, but they managed to come through that. Wasn't so exposed in the next two, but then in the semi-final against the Koreans were able to not only defend well enough to kind of withstand the power and attacking prowess of the Indians, but were also looking to get onto the attack and give them play with that little bit more speed. The Indians were just kind of missing out on a few little things. It is minute details, little things that with just a few more tournaments under their belt will be right back. But very promising for their return. They looked very motivated to come back. They looked, yeah, like I said, watching them, it was like they hadn't really been away. Just in little areas they weren't quite able to be as sharp as they were, which is completely to be expected. I do think another reason why they were able to do well in this tournament, even though they did lack that little bit, I did say that the pairs that they played, bar the first round, weren't able to expose that to the fullest extent. But it was also the conditions in the hall were quite tricky. They were very windy. So I think that as a result, a lot of rallies, even in the singles events, became quite error prone and bitty, and there wasn't much flow. And I think that kind of like helped them, because they're a pair that, like I said, they've developed this like organizational, this almost like approach, of a Danish approach, where they've got some really nice set plays, and that can make things really awkward and can also exaggerate that kind of bittiness and that lack of rhythm. So that, combined with the other pairs weren't able, making a lot of mistakes, I think if they were slightly off, it wasn't as exposed. I think had it been in a tournament or in a venue where longer rallies could persist, I think maybe they might have come unstuck a little bit sooner because of that lack of match play. Maybe not, but that's just my thoughts. But regardless of the conditions or whatever, they did play really well, and I think they're going to be back at their best in come 2025. When they're back playing regularly, that all they need is more consistent match play. But I think they've done a great thing by allowing themselves to have some time off, because they came in looking mentally fresh, and based off their Instagram post, they were very happy to be back, and I'm sure we're going to see big things of them next year. Okay, continuing on with the comeback theme, but this is in a different way. There were two matches where we saw massive comebacks, so pairs that were miles down and managed to kind of somehow come out of it. The first one was in the semi-finals of the women's singles between An Se-young and Tomoka Miyazaki. In the second game, Miyazaki was 20-13 up. That's a 7-point deficit, yet An Se-young was able to win 9 straight points to win 22-20. That's a massive amount of points to come back from, and if I'm honest, watching it, it was also kind of came out of nowhere. Because throughout that second game, not only did Miyazaki start to play really well, she was very sharp from the net, and she was clearly trying to give An Se-young any time with the net, give her very little time, but lots of deception shots, and kind of expose An Se-young's a little bit still her movement in certain situations. And on top of that, it looked like An Se-young was struggling with her lifts just a little bit. There was a few times where she'd go to kind of like lift and she almost second-guessed herself and it went a bit short, and then she was punished. So she kind of wasn't playing with the same shot quality, and then that was capitalised by Miyazaki. But then, almost out of nowhere, An Se-young just managed to find some confidence in a game and just managed to reel off a load of points and obviously make that massive comeback. Yeah, we could sit here and say Miyazaki should have won a few of those points, or, how did she not just get 1 point? But I don't think it was so much her. Well, yeah, it was her losing it, but I think it was the fact that An Se-young was able to just completely almost 180 her game and just found this confidence from nowhere. Obviously, a bit of luck, a bit of this, but she made it her own luck with the fact that she was just able to find that confidence and turn it around, and really showed the kind of class that she has as a player. So yeah, that was the first one. And the second one was in the mixed doubles quarterfinal between Chen Tangji and To Yi-wei and Guo Jinhua and Cheng Fanghui. The Chinese pair were a game and 20-11 up. So not only did Chen and To manage to come back from a 9-point deficit, so that's bigger than An Se-young's one in her semi-final, but they were also match point down, not game point down. That's a huge difference. And also one final thing was they were playing a Chinese pair in China. So that is absolutely remarkable comeback. That might just be one of the best comebacks ever in badminton. I know there was one from a tournament in Spain many years ago where a player was a game and 26 down, or maybe not a game down 26, but 26 down and managed to win that game. So that's probably the most points. And obviously there's the famous one where Li Chongwei came back into Lin Dan from 2012 in the deciding game, in the final of the Malaysia Open. That's probably one of the most famous comebacks ever, and still for me, the greatest. It was used as the main storyline in Li Chongwei's movie. But this one, even more points than that, but just incredible given the situation. They were completely outclassed up until that point. You know, the first game the Chinese had won 21-14, and then they were 18-9, 19-9, and 20-11 up. So really, if you think about it, the Chinese had it, and it was in China, yet Chen and To were able to come back. Now, it must be said that whilst I've made a big song and dance about this comeback, they were massively helped by the Chinese, who, once they reached match point, honestly didn't seem to be able to return the serves at all. There was so many errors. I think the average length of the rally after they got to match point, so in that whole comeback, was about 2 to 3 shots. There was just far too many errors, and when even they did, the Chinese completely froze. So yeah, that was a big factor in this comeback. What I will say about the Chinese pair is two things, really. One is that after losing such a situation, they still managed to have a good third game. It wasn't like the third game then they completely lost their way and just melted. They did make it a decent game, and they did at one point, I think they had it almost back. That, you know, you wouldn't think that the Malaysians were just going to run away with it. So that shows great character. And two is they're actually a really good, interesting pair. I think obviously you've got the Olympic champions Zheng Siwei and Wang Yechong. They haven't come back yet, but obviously they're the top pair. And then you've got Feng and Wang and Zhang and Wei, and then below that there's a couple of pairs, and I think this pair are one of the ones that are they could make a little step up. I particularly like the guy. I don't know why when I watch him he reminds me of a very young Zhang Jun. Left-handed, just the way he moves and his mannerisms just remind me of him. So they're a good pair to watch, and I just wanted to make that note before people just go say, oh, the Chinese blew it and they threw it away. Yes, they did, but they are a talent, and the fact that they were able to still come out in the third and make it very competitive and didn't just roll over, I think needs credit. But obviously the main credit does go to Chen and To. What an amazing comeback. Yeah, one of the best comebacks I've ever seen. Is it one of the best ones? Are there any other comebacks that I haven't mentioned that could rival that? It is quite incredible to come back from 20-11 down, having 9 match points. I think maybe it was even 10 because it was 23-21. I can't actually remember whether the Chinese had another match point. It doesn't really matter. Amazing comeback, and it was a huge story of the week. Before the China Masters got underway, the last tournament before the World Tour Finals, the last tournament that had points going towards it, was that there were 2 players that had to reach the final if they wanted to qualify. One of them was Tomoka Miyazaki. Unfortunately, as you already know, she wasn't able to do so, falling to An Si-young in the semi-finals, agonisingly close. The other one was Jonatan Christie. He was able to do it, and to do so, he defeated 3 Chinese players back-to-back in China. He beat Lu Guangzhou, Lei Lanxi, and then Shi Yu Qi, the world number 1. An incredible set of results. And I think what makes it even more special is, or interesting to me, is the fact that, yes, he beat 3 Chinese players back-to-back in China, and that by doing so, he denied China their second player into the World Tour Finals, which was Li Shifeng. Li Shifeng was in a really good position to qualify, having won in Japan the week before. I think he just needed to get through a round here. Maybe my maths is incorrect, but he fell in the first round to Lin Chunyi, which opened up the door for Jonatan Christie, and once that door was open, he ran straight through it and took it. He was brilliant all week, I thought, Jonatan Christie. In every match against those Chinese opponents, he played fast, He played attacking. My one criticism of Jonatan Christie is sometimes he goes a little bit passive, or when he tries to play long, drawn-out rallies, it gets a little bit slow. When he's at his best, he is playing attacking, he is playing fast-tempoed, he's utilising the fast drives, which I think he's really good at, and he was doing that all really well, especially in the semi-final. I think that result against Shi Yu Qi was, that performance was absolutely perfection. I'll get onto the final against Antonsen in the next section, but focusing on this one, yeah, he was really good. He did have some moments where he made some uncharacteristic errors, and that's something that Steen Pedersen pointed out, of something that he thinks that Christie is playing really well and has this ability to play at an incredibly high level right now, that is. But what sometimes lets him down is just going off the boil and having these inconsistent moments. I think it's that. Plus then, once that happens, he tends to get a little bit drawn into slightly slower rallies, going against the kind of style that I think works best for him. He is a physical player, he can play those long rallies, but I think if he wants to use them, he's going to have to use it by playing with a slightly higher pace. But still, what a fantastic result for him. It showed great mental fortitude, that he knew that he had to get to the final, and he was just able to put in performance after performance after performance against a Chinese crowd that were clearly supporting the home players, but also supporting them because if any of them were to defeat him, they would get their other Chinese player into the World Tour final. So I think that, as a story, just gave it a lot of weight, and it was why it, obviously combined with the fact that he's Indonesian and Indonesian have a lot of supporters online, this story is getting a lot of traction, and I was definitely following it every match. I was like, okay, this is going to be another tough one, another challenge, another test for Christie, and he delivered every single time. So yeah, sometimes Christie also gets a bad rep as someone who's very inconsistent or can throw away leads, and I thought maybe this situation, I know that he did say that he wasn't thinking about the World Tour finals. He probably says that. I'm sure he kind of had one. There's no way that it wasn't crossing his mind, but no, he delivered exactly what he needed to do, and yeah, congratulations to him. That's a huge result for him to qualify for the World Tour finals, and to do so by defeating those three Chinese players back to back, culminating in defeating Shi Yu Qi, who was looking pretty sharp that week and looking highly motivated. Yeah, that was fantastic. So huge congratulations, Jonatan. I look forward to watching you at the World Tour finals. So finals day at the China Masters was a little bit lackluster. There wasn't too much excitement. There were many one-sided matches, but there was one that was absolutely incredible, and that was the mixed doubles. 92 minutes of amazing badminton, played in an absolute ferocious pace. Both players playing really well. Incredibly exciting. And for me, I said earlier in this video that there was a lot of matches that were a bit bitty, lacking kind of flow and pairs getting into the match, but this one wasn't like that. Both pairs, for the most part, played absolutely amazingly, and yeah, it was really intense, very, very close, and yeah, it could have gone either way at certain points. So much drama. I really, really enjoyed this one. In fact, sorry, I've got so excited by this match that I actually forgot to tell you who it was between. It was between China's Feng Yanze and Wang Dongping, and Malaysia's Hu Pangrong and Cheng Yu Xin. For me, with this match, there's plenty to talk about. So I think I'll kind of go through in sections. One, before it, I think there was two types of pressure going into this one. Two types of completely different pressure. For the Chinese, the pressure's kind of obvious. They were playing on home soil. They're the higher ranked pair. They're the pair that was expected to win. They were the top seeds, and obviously, like I said, they were playing in front of their home crowd. On top of that, they were also playing to maintain the tradition. And that's the tradition that only Chinese pairs have won the mixed doubles at the China Masters. That's something that's been true since 2005. And with their win here, they've managed to maintain that. But that's a lot of pressure on their shoulders. And if you combine that with the fact that they were playing a pair that had beaten their compatriots, the number 2 seeds, earlier in the week, and had shown a fantastic level, and had nothing to lose in a lot of ways, then that's even more pressure on the Chinese shoulders. So definitely a huge amount of credit should be going to them for being able to handle that. The other kind of pressure on the Malaysians was that obviously, whilst I said they have nothing to lose, they had a lot to win and gain. This was their first major final, so a massive amount of nerves are going to be there. Obviously, they had a chance to become the first non-Chinese pair to win the mixed doubles at this event. They had the chance to also become the first Malaysian mixed pair to win a tournament of this level on the World Tour. So there was a lot of pressure, and obviously for both pairs, the pressure they just would have put on themselves would have been there. I wouldn't like to say that one pair handled it better than the other. Obviously the Chinese pair won, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Malaysians didn't handle it. I thought they played really, really well. They could have won it. I'm sure Cheng will be kicking herself for that missed service, that service error on their match point. But yeah, no, for me, what was decisive and what I want to talk about a little bit is Feng Yanze. You know, we know Wang Dongping, she's the former Olympic champion, and a lot of times she steadied the ship, and she's done that with this partnership quite well and done it quite often. For me, Feng Yanze has always been someone that I've said a lot of has been vulnerable in certain situations. When the pressure's really there, he can crumble a little bit. And yeah, there were times within this match where I felt that maybe we might be seeing that again. But he was able to kind of steady it. He was able to kind of change his game a little bit. He went from a little bit this to suddenly on top of the tape. And you know, when certain situations, like in the second game when they were leading quite heavily and then suddenly the Malaysians made it tight, and you know, they were mere points away from losing, and all that pressure and all the things I just said would have come through, Feng Yanze was able to hold it together and played those points really, really well. On top of that, what I really liked once he did settle was that he mixed his angles up. Those steep slices and smashes definitely were very effective. There were a few times where I think the Malaysians were defending a little deep so that they had that little bit more time to really punch through their defence, and Feng Yanze was able to kind of capitalise on that with the steep stuff, which was really good. And I think another thing that was quite crucial was that Wang Dongping especially started to flick serve Cheng a lot and get her away from the net and expose a little bit of her movement going backwards, and just able to kind of allow themselves to get on top of the rallies. This was a match that could have gone either way. Just minor things like that. Yeah, so Feng Yanze handled the pressure, I thought, better than I'd seen him in the past, and I think that's just a sign that he's maturing as a player. You know, he's now been on the World Tour a couple of years, and it just takes time. You know, he's playing with an Olympic champion. He was a good, very successful player as a junior, so there was a lot of expectation on his shoulders. Combine that with them being partnered with a former Olympic champion, there's no wonder that he was going to feel it a little bit, and I think it's just taken a little bit of time to mature and gain experience. I still feel there's that vulnerability, but then really a lot of players can feel that. But I think what's happening is that when he's in those situations, he's able to not only take direction from Wang Dongping and their coaches, but from within himself. It doesn't seem to bleed into his game as much as it used to. So he's definitely maturing as a player. For the Malaysians, I'm not going to say too much here because I think there's a lot of questions about them and about their future and all that kind of stuff. So I'll get onto that then. You know, I thought the Malaysians were brilliant all week. What I really liked in this final and throughout what they showed all week was their flat play, especially Hu. When he was slightly below tape, his quality of shot, there was so many times just skimming the net. And on top of that, he would use the width soft and then the fast flat stuff. He kind of does remind me a little bit, the way that he plays, it reminds me of their coach, Nova Widianto. There's one ability that just kept shining out to me, and that was that when the game was incredibly fast and flat, it was almost as if he could pause the game for a split second. The shuttle would be on his racket and then he'd be able to send it away at an angle that I just didn't think was possible. Most time when it goes flat, you know, it kind of goes with the racket, whether you're doing this, it goes straight, this cross, but he was almost able to go and just suddenly change it and hit it really, really well. And just this stuff, and on his overhead stuff, just slightly changing the angle almost at the last second. And I felt that was a quality, and you combine that with the cross touches and stuff. I felt that was a skill, having watched a lot of Nova matches recently, because I'm doing a video on Liliana and Natsir. That was something he was so good at. He almost looked nonchalant on court in a way, but just would be like so quick, and anything slightly below tape, his quality was just fantastic. So I think there's been a lot of influence from Nova there, and I would say the same about the other Malaysian pair, but back to this one. They were unfortunate not to win this final, but they played a brilliant match. And like I said, I'll talk more about them in the Q&A section. But yeah, no, this final was really good. It came down to just who could handle the pressure that little bit more. I think Feng Yanze stepping up the court, playing into his strengths there, made a huge thing, and unrelenting attack, but attack with variety. Wang Dongping was her usual self, just steadying the shit when it needs to be. A few moments of brilliance, but also her flick serves to Cheng were... Yeah, so when it comes to a match like this, it's usually just those minor little things that can make the difference, and that's what made the difference here. Okay, so the next final of the day was the women's singles between An Se-young and Gao Fangzhe. For me, obviously, this was an incredibly one-sided final. An Se-young never looked in any trouble, coming out very, very comfortably. I did think that could be the case. I did also think that it might be a little bit closer, but I just think the styles and the way that Gao plays, I just don't think it really was going to... it didn't really kind of put her in good stead to kind of trouble someone like An Se-young. Because I think Steen put this really well, is that she doesn't quite have the front court sharpness or the ability to inject speed to really pressure An Se-young. So, and that was kind of true. Like, I think she ran out of ideas very, very quickly. An Se-young's defense was very solid, and her general shot quality was just was perfect. So yeah, no, but it was really good to see her in the final. I think regardless of how the final went, I think she should take a lot away from this. I think after having gone through an Achilles rupture injury, which usually ends a lot of players' careers, especially a Chinese player in the women's singles department, the conveyor belt for their players never stops. So the fact that she's able to kind of come back from that injury and find her way back into this kind of sort of level and kind of get herself back within being one of China's top women's singles stars is commendable and really good to see. I hope we see more of her. She's a bit of a hark back to the Chinese players of the early 2000s. You know, tall, very good overhead skills, nice simple front court. Yeah, just a nice style to watch. Having said that, it's a style that I don't think marries up well with a player like An Se-young or the modern women's singles game in a way, because I think to hurt someone like An Se-young, she needs be able to inject more speed into the rallies at times and have a little bit more from the front of the court where she could, you know, play with a little bit more deception. So, you know, for An Se-young, she played a brilliant final, but she played brilliantly all week, to be honest. I know that she had a close match in her first one against Ratchanok, but that's to be expected. It's a first round, plus Ratchanok is a phenomenal player. And then in the second round, she did go to 3, but really she was miles up in the first. I don't know how she lost it, but then she won the second and third very comfortably. And then from there, she just went from strength to strength. Yeah, she had that minor blip against Miyazaki in the semis, but the way she turned that around kind of completely nullified that blip for me. What was really good to see was that she looked sharp. She looked like she's been practicing. You know, she made so many uncharacteristic errors in Denmark. Rarely saw that here. She took a taping off in the first round against Ratchanok, and then played, I think as the week went on, the taping got a little bit bigger, but it was only on the bottom of her knee. So I think her injury looks to be on the mend. I did actually drop her a message on Instagram to say well done after her first match, and that it was good that she her knee looked better, and she said yes, it's definitely getting there. So amazing signs for her in the future. And another big one was that I know that it was Ronnie Agustinus, I think is his name, the Indonesian coach. He was back in the chair, which I think definitely helped, but Sung Ji-hun was also there, and it looked like those two were getting along a little better. There was a high five I saw after one match, and when Sung Ji-hun was giving advice, An Se-young seemed to be nodding and listening. So, like I said, compare An Se-young in Denmark to this China Masters, and it's like night and day. And in the final, she showed all of the class. I mean, like I said, Gao Fangzhe wasn't able to really put any sort of pressure on her, and An Se-young just looked incredibly comfortable. No real tactical things from An Se-young I saw, other than just doing what she does best. Very, very solid. Able to play the big court really well, even in the tricky conditions. She looked confident. She took her attacking chances when they were there. And yeah, there is a question I might as well ask this one now, because I've covered most of them. Someone said, what do I think An Seong's ceiling would be in 2025 if she's injury free, and for me there is no ceiling if she's injury free. If she plays like that and continues to just get better and better, and everything else around her injuries improving, the situation in career is improving, her happiness and mental state, her relationship with the coaches is improving. If all of that is on the up, then so will her game. And I with the fact that women's singles is in a traditional transition period, and a lot of the players that could challenge her are either kind of falling away or gone. There's still some that definitely can challenge her, okay, but with competition being even less strong, then yeah, she could really dominate, and 2025 could be an even better year than 2023 if she stays injury free and everything else goes in the same direction. So yeah, huge congratulations to her at the China Masters. We will be seeing her obviously at the World Tour Finals, and I think it'd be difficult to bet against her winning there too. So yeah. Okay, so the next final was an all-Chinese affair, the women's doubles, and that was between Liu Shengxu and Tan Ning, and Li Yijing and Luo Zhumin. Like the women's singles, this one was incredibly one-sided. Liu Shengxu and Tan Ning they basically carried on from last week in Kumamoto and actually went up another level. They looked absolutely insane. They really are ushering in a kind of new approach to women's doubles, and it's really exciting. And like last week, I don't think there's really too much to say about this final. Even when watching it, I don't think Jillian Steen had too much to say because it was just so incredibly one-sided. But what I will say is that obviously we know Liu Shengxu and Tan Ning are the world's best women's doubles pair right now, and China have got in them a pair that could replicate, if not surpass, what Chen and Jia have done. But also, the pair they beat, although it was a one-sided match, they're also incredibly young. They're 22 years old. They were very successful in the junior ranks, and they've been steadily improving. So for me, it just shows China and women's doubles have absolutely no worries about their future. And having watched the World Juniors this year, there's also some, and previous years, there's also some other pairs there. So the conveyor belt of Chinese women and women's doubles is never ending, and it will never stop, and it's in a very healthy position. Yeah, like I said, not much to say about this final, but just, again, another fantastic performance from Liu Shengxu and Tan Ning. I think the most amount of points they dropped all week was 33 in total, and that was against Pearly Tan and Tina Muralitaran. So that just shows how dominant they were this week. And another thing that's a little bit frightening is that they've shown that they can kind of deliver these kind of performances in whatever the conditions are, and they show no signs of seeing any sort of pressure on their shoulders. So yeah, I just spoke about An Seong's 2025 potential. What about this pair's 2025 potential? And yeah, it could depend if Chen and Jia come back. Who knows on that one front, but there aren't many pairs out there that are going to be able to stop them, and I think there's going to be a lot of pairs that are going to have to, and coaches are going to have to think about, what do we do? What's the next thing to stop this? Like the game always evolves and always moves forward, and there's always pairs and players that are at the front of that, and I think Liu Shengxu and Tan Ning are that pair, and it's going to come down to, I'm not so sure you're going to have to just go, right, we're just going to have to become jump smashers and attackers, but maybe it might mean that we need to have an even better defence. We need to become insanely solid in our basic game, because if there's ever any weakness, I think maybe it's that they could get frustrated if their attack isn't working as quickly. So I think it's going to take either a pair to come out even faster than them, or even more powerful, or have a defence that's absolutely rock solid. So we'll see if that can happen, but I think this pair are, like I said last week, are just fantastic, and they're the world number one pair, and again, I think they're going to be the one to lead Chinese women's doubles for this complete Olympic cycle. So the next final was the men's singles, and that was between Anders Antonsen and Jonatan Christie. Already spoken about Jonatan Christie in this video, and I think what most people felt after having watched this final was, what happened to him? Because he played so well during the week, beating all those Chinese players, and his result in the semi-final, his performance more specifically, was almost faultless. And then in the final, it was, I think a lot of people have kind of gone, well, what happened? Because it wasn't faultless. It was almost a complete opposite. And for me, I don't quite know how to explain it. He made a lot of mistakes. He was forcing things far too early. But I think a lot of that credit needs to go towards Anders Antonsen. He's also played really well this week. He beat Viktor in the semis, and he beat a lot of other players also quite comfortably throughout the week. I think as we know, Anders Antonsen is a very good tactician, and he plays really well in these kind of more difficult, driftier conditions because he's able to adapt and think his way through. He's able to have so many different styles and approaches that he can do. And for me, with this men's singles, what Jonatan Christie had been doing so well in the week was play really, really fast, very, very attacking. So I thought it was going to be interesting that, having watched Anders throughout the week, where he played a little bit slower, a little bit more passively, it was going to be who was able to implement their tactic, their style better, and in this final it was Antonsen. You know, a lot of slices, a lot of slower angles, and at the net, and Anders has always done this, but he does a lot of where he just holds it and just does little pushes and holds it. He always kind of lands, delays, and then pushes it, which is a way to kind of not only just unsettle someone's rhythm with their footwork, but also it's a way of kind of gaining a little bit more control, but also slowing the game down a little bit at times. And so I think Anders was able to do that, and I think coupled that with his good quality of shot, Christie just got a little bit impatient. So yeah, there isn't really much else to say. I don't know what was going on through Jonatan Christie's head throughout the game, whether he felt pressure or nerves, or he was like, I've been playing really well all week, I think I can win this one, so he just tried that a little bit harder, whereas throughout the rest of the week he wasn't really thinking too much. But I think it was more, Anders was just that little bit, he was able to execute his game plan a little bit more effectively. He was able to slow the game down, make the game his. He also played with great consistency, great shot quality, and his ability to play the conditions well really enabled him to win. I think another thing as well was what really showed to me with Anders' tactical ability was in the first game he played pretty much the majority of it nice and slow. Slow is the wrong word, it's still a good tempo, but you know what I mean, like a slower game. He wasn't trying to kind of match Christie pace for pace. I think that was quite a clear tactic. I think also part of it was the fact that he was on the slower end. But what was noticeable was that when they changed ends and then Anders was on the slightly what you call trickier one because he couldn't lift it as much, the pace of his rallies suddenly went up. There was a lot of a big effort to get on top of the net and push it fast and push down, but he was using the rear court as well, so he showed bravery as well, which is quite an important thing, because if he just went all out attack and didn't do anything, I think Christie would have been able to counter him. But the fact just occasionally he was able to go over him or clear him or push him made a big thing. But there was a really noticeable thing from Anders to make a big effort to take up on the front court, so that his disadvantage of being on the faster end wouldn't play into his hands too much. Wouldn't go against him. Sorry. And then I think that kind of coupled with, by the time we got to the second half of that second game, I noticed that Christie's belief in the fact that he could win that day, even though the score he wasn't down by too much. His belief went. I don't think he felt that he could win, and Anders, I think, noticed that and was able to kind of push his advantage quite clearly from there and then take the title. What's quite interesting about this win for Anders is that I believe now that he's going to overtake Viktor Axelsen as the top Dane. He's going to move to world number 2 and Viktor's down to world number 3. There was a question about their match in the semi-final. I'll answer that later. He's now back up to his highest world ranking of 2. Can he go up to world number 1? Yeah, if he plays like that. He won the Denmark Open. This is his first tournament since then. He's won the China Masters. He's going to be someone difficult to beat at the World Tour Finals, and he could push on and have a really good 2025, and who knows, he might become the world number 1. That would be quite incredible. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. A great result, a great week for Anders, and so huge congratulations. And the last final of the day was the men's doubles, and that was between Gautama and Isfahani of Indonesia and Seo and Jin Yong of Korea. It was a bit of a reunion for Seo and Gautama, as they were an amazing pair at the Badminton Excel event not long ago in Jakarta. So it was great to see those two back, but now on opposing teams. So that was a nice little reunion. in terms of this match heading into it, it was really, really interesting because both pairs have been playing really well all week. But on top of that, they're kind of like completely opposing styles. So, you know, Gautama and Isfahani are your classic Indonesian pair with an absolute extreme approach to the first four. You know, that's where they win so many of their points. And I think with the fact that the conditions were the way they were, it really played into their hands and was a big factor in why they were able to play and get so far into the tournament. And then you have the Koreans who are, you know, just incredibly solid, very good defense, and basic's kind of a little bit of a wrong term, but you know what I mean. Basic when you compare them to the Indonesians. So for me, it was going to be a huge battle in the first four. Can the Indonesians do as much damage as they usually do there? And for the Koreans, can they nullify that? Can they survive those situations as well as maybe take some of their own chances within those first four? And as the match progressed, it was the Koreans that were able to come out on top in those situations far more. And as a result, came out as winners. For me, what was the big deciding factor was basically what I just said. So what the Koreans were able to do to nullify the Indonesian strength from the first four was two things. So when they returned, they were incredibly simple. They didn't try to do too much. They were quite happy to, you know, send it away if it had to be done. But more than that, when they were serving, their serves were so good, especially Jin Yong. His services were so tight. It basically meant that the Indonesians weren't able to do many returns that would then get them the advantage. They were almost on the back foot from then. So really good serves and very simple returns. Basically, were able to get the play out into open rallies where the Koreans were able to gain more of an advantage. On top of this, what the Koreans were able to do so well in previous rounds was that the defense was incredibly solid. But what they also did was, especially Jin Yong, but they were moving forward, pushing forward so incredibly fast in almost at every given opportunity. I can't remember how many times I saw them like do a fast defense and then the shuttle bit of the net and they're there. Okay, so, you know, I speak about the Indonesians being very good in the first four. They're also very good if they're able to kind of simulate a similar situation through the net. So if they're up early and they're able to kind of play it down somewhere, then they're able to kind of follow what happens next incredibly well. So they're able to win these quick points. But the Koreans took that advantage away from them by literally being, whenever the Indonesians were going to play a net shot, one if not both the Koreans were already there and completely on top. And so they just completely took away any advantage, any possible advantage the Indonesians could get incredibly well. On top of that, they were attacking fast, they were rotating quickly, just playing brilliantly. I mean, I was really, really impressed with both of them, especially Jin Yong. Some of his interceptions at the net were really, 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 really good. So yeah, I think what made it in favour, I think what won it for the Koreans was they played the service situation in their own way by playing really good serves. They were able to take away the advantage of the Indonesians, but also where the Indonesians could maybe get the similar advantage through the net, the Koreans closed that area down very quickly. So they were gaining the attack far more often. And then you combine that with when they're on the defence, their defence was also very, very solid. So yeah, the Indonesians really struggled to find any sort of opportunities or chances to create the kind of stuff that we know that they can do, and stuff that they were able to do so well in the earlier rounds, stuff that was, you know, brought them so much success. It just wasn't working, and a big part of that was because the Koreans closed it down so well. So yeah, now a couple of things. One is that I must say a huge congratulations to both pairs, but let's start with Gautama and Isfahani. It was their, you know, you've got to consider that earlier this year they weren't even able to qualify for these events. So now they're up to their career high ranking of 13 and they're in their first final this level, and they are independent players as well. I think it's a fantastic achievement and it really shows where they've gone as a pair. And on top of that, it also qualified them for the World Tour Finals, which is absolutely huge, and I'm very excited to watch them play. They are an exciting pair, especially, you know, there's someone, especially if you're into kind of like intricacies of badminton, you know, kind of tactical situations and abilities to kind of win the first four shots. They are a good example of how good that can be done. And then for me, with the Koreans, we all know Seo Kang is obviously very experienced. We've seen him for ages. We know what he can do. But Jin Yong, he didn't look out of sorts. I thought maybe this final, another factor that could go into it was that 3 of the 4 players this was like their first final of this level, and maybe that might be quite telling. But Jin Yong looked just as comfortable on that court as Seo Kang. Maybe you could say that Seo Kang, having that experience, calmed Jin Yong a little bit, but for me, Jin Yong just looked like a player. And this is when I talked about last week, that gut feeling about him. It was really, that became even stronger, because when watching him, he never looked fazed by any sort of situation he was in. He looked so calm throughout that final, and he's a fantastic player. I've always said that enough. He looked at home on that finals day on that court. And lastly, one thing that I have to say before I finish this section is that I absolutely loved every single time when the Koreans won. They would celebrate nice and big, give each other a hug, and then they'd run to the net to thank their opponents. They didn't go off to their coaches. Not that I have anything against players doing that. We all get caught up in the heat of the moment, but just the fact that they celebrated, thanked each other, and they didn't just like walk to the net and give it. They jogged in together, almost in unison, and they did it every single time. Thanked their opponents, and then they thanked obviously the umpires, and then their coaches. It was just a nice show of class. I just really liked it. I noticed it every single time they won. The little run to the net. Yeah, that was nice. So yeah, congratulations to all 4 players in the final, and obviously especially to Jin Yong and Seo Kang. Right, okay, so the next section is going to be the Q&A. I did this last week for the first time and I really enjoyed it. So I thought, let's do it again, and it's probably going to be a staple of these episodes. So I asked everyone on YouTube and Instagram again for your questions, and you've delivered even more questions than last week. So I'm going to try and answer as many of them as I can. So yeah, let's crack on. Okay, so this one is quite long. I'll quickly read it. Because I think he gives some explanation, some kind of in his own input as well. Do you think Kang Min-hyuk's time as Seo Sung-jae's partner is over? With him attending his mandatory military service, Sung-jae is partnered with new people, and Jin Yong played brilliantly with him. In my opinion, he's a better player than Min-hyuk. Faster, has a stronger attacking as well as a defending game, and is deadly at the front. He has showed he is capable of defeating any pair with Sung-jae. I don't see him getting replaced by Kang Min-hyuk ever again. But then again, there are so many Korean men's doubles players. Kang Min-hyuk could find a new partner, but that one won't be Super Sir, that's for sure. Okay, so a lot of things there. I'm not going to go into who I think's better. I think that's a statement that can't be made yet. I mean, Kang Min-hyuk has achieved obviously more than Jin Yong. They're completely different players. They're both fantastic in their own right. When Kang Min-hyuk and Seo Sung-jae first played together, I was really impressed by how good Kang Min-hyuk was. Jin Yong is also a player that has impressed me massively. So I think both players are really, really good. I said in the last week's episode I wasn't quite sure who the new pairings are going to be with Seo Sung-jae and Kim Won-ho and Jin Yong and all the other players. And I still don't know, to be honest. I think Seo Sung-jae put something on Instagram that maybe implied, but it could be a bad Google Translate, that him and Jin Yong will be playing together in 2025. But we'll just have to wait and see. I think I'm not quite sure how long Kang Min-hyuk's out for with military service. It could be up to 2 years. I honestly don't know. But like this guy who sent in this question said quite rightly, is there are plenty of men's doubles players. We could see Kang Min-hyuk return back with Kim Won-ho for all we know. The question is, I don't know. But I think regardless of who they get partnered with, I think there's potential for a number of different pairings that could do really well. Would I like to see Seo Sung-jae and Jin Yong continue? Yes, I thought they were very good. They've been very exciting, very successful. Obviously, they've reached a quarter-final in Kumamoto, and then they just won in China. So, yeah, they've definitely got potential to do really, really well. Do I think that Kang Min-hyuk and Seo Sung-jae's partnership is over? No, I don't think it could be over. Again, I really don't know, because I don't know how long Kang Min-hyuk's going to be out with military service, and I obviously have no idea who the Korean coaches think Seo Sung-jae and all the others should be partnered with. So it's something that we'll have to just wait and see. But it's going to be exciting, and I'm looking forward to finding out the answers to those questions. Is Viktor slowly getting old? Because I noticed his movements recently have been a bit slower than before. He's getting sick and tired more. Shown at the Denmark Open and Kumamoto Masters. Well, everyone's getting old. and Viktor's now into his 30s. That's going to play a big thing. I said last week that he's employed Peter Gader as his new coach because Gader had so much success in his 30s. So I think that shows to me that Viktor isn't done with yet, and I think it'd be silly to override him. Even with 2 tournaments where he hasn't played well, he's still reached the latter stages, he's still reached the semi-finals. And for me, maybe he's getting... I don't know whether he's been looking more tired or sick. He definitely didn't look fully fit. He looked really tired at the end of the Antonsen match. I don't know what's happened to him, what's the cause for that, whether it was illness. I think I heard Jill mention something of a head cold, but again, I heard that a bit out of context, so I'm not 100% sure. He definitely is slowing down a bit, like everyone does as they reach their later years, and I think a number of people have said that he needs to change his style, or because he's employed the same style since he was younger. Maybe he needs to change certain things because he's not able to play with the same sort of intensity that he did when he was younger. For me, I don't know the answer to that. His coaches will know that far, and he will know that far better than I will. What I will say is that Viktor is the kind of player that will, if there is something that needs to be changed, something that he needs to adapt, he will do it. And so I have all faith in his professionalism and his approach to the game, that if something needs to be changed, if he feels really he needs to make a change, he will do it. So, Viktor is getting old. We all are, unfortunately. Is he getting more sick or more tired more? Maybe it's just been maybe something's affected him that he hasn't let on. I know in the past that when he's had these situations, he's usually withdrawn, which is why I think people are asking this, because he's still playing. And to that, I don't really have an answer. What I do know is that if things need to change, they will. And I think once Peter Gader joins his team, I think we should wait to see what kind of Peter brings to the table there, and if there are any changes brought by that, I think we're going to see that next year. But I wouldn't write Viktor off quite yet. I think that would be absolute suicide to do that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving into next year for Viktor Axelsen. Okay, so this one's not really a question, but it's something that I did want to talk about, and it's it's a sad thing. So the Daddies are retiring. No official confirmation yet, but it's quite certain. Well, understandable if they're retiring. Asan's 37 and Setuan is 40. 40. I mean, that's... and the fact... I know they're not winning much. They haven't won much this year, but they seem to really enjoy playing their game. And I know this was touched on by Anna's and Vittinghus in their last episode of the Badminton Experience, that if they, or maybe the one before, but if they're still enjoying and getting something out of it and whatever, then by all means they should continue to play. But having said that, I also heard these rumours that they're retiring. I think, I mentioned Gyllenstein a lot, but they were talking about it, that there's no official notice of it. Maybe it's going to happen at the Indonesian Masters. A few of the Indonesian legends have retired at that tournament because it comes in January, so maybe we'll see something then. Or maybe they'll just slink away into, they'll just retire quietly. I mean, I don't think there needs to be a song and dance if they don't want it. In fact, I think it would play into Setuan's character quite a lot. He's always been the silent, diligent type, and I think he would be quite happy just to retire and move on with his life. Another thing that made me realise, one thing I noticed, or someone pointed it out, was Setuan does these vlogs on YouTube, and I think the title of the one when they were in Denmark was something along the lines of "My Final Tour of Europe." So there's definitely been signs that the end is near for them. They will be sadly missed if they want, as and when they do retire. But it'll be a sad moment. I think they've been such a legendary pair. They're legends individually, but as a pair they've achieved so much, and I think they're going to be massively missed. And don't worry, I will do a video on them both. That will probably take me a year to make. That is a lot to get through, and it'll probably be 2 or 3 parts. But I will do it because I absolutely love them as a pair, and I respect them massively, and I would want to do their career justice. But yeah, now I think the Daddies will be retiring, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens at the Indonesian Masters next year. But let's wait to hear the official confirmation. Okay, so like I said, there were a lot of questions about Hu Pangrong and Cheng Yu Sin, the Malaysian pair from the mixed. Okay. This question though, is there potential for the Malaysian mixed doubles pair? Well, yes, of course. They showed massive potential here at this tournament, reaching the final. I was really impressed with both of them. I was especially impressed with Hu Pangrong. I already said that he kind of reminds me of his coach, Novo Widianto, in a lot of ways, with a lot of the skills that he has, the ability to play quality from below the tape, the ability to almost change angles in the flat drives at the last second. He has a fantastic attack with good variety. I mean, the power he can produce is really good. But at the same time, I don't think this should be as a surprise. This pair have come together, I think, in the last year or so. I think they're in 2023. Both of them have had a few partners before. Hu Pangrong, also, let's not forget, in 2021 won the deciding match for Malaysia to defeat Indonesia at the Sudirman Cup. So they've shown potential, both of them, for a number of years, and they've had multiple partners. Maybe finally coming together is where it finally works out for them. But do they have potential? Yes. For me, what's going to be really interesting is how they handle how do they handle what's going to come next after such a big result, because they're now going to be thrust into the media attention. Obviously, loads of people asking me questions. There's going to be articles all over the place about them. There's going to be this expectation now, anticipation of what can they do. And so for me, it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle that. Obviously, on the flip side, this result can give them huge confidence, and it's only going to the fact that it's come at the end, it's going to flow into 2025, and we start with the tournament in Malaysia. That could be interesting, actually. Everything thought about that is they're obviously going to go into that tournament off the back. I think this will be their last tournament before then. So it's going to be, they're obviously going to have confidence from the fact that they've proven that they can defeat a number of the world's best and push even the world number ones. That they have all the capabilities to become really good. Can they actually deliver on it? That's going to be a lot of expectation on themselves, but also from the media, from the fans. And not to single out Malaysia, but we all know that pressure from the media and from fans can be very heavy over there. So how they handle that and move forward with that is going to be very interesting to see. What might help them is the fact that there's another Malaysian mixed pair. You've got Chen and To. They're also been doing really well, had a very good year. So maybe together they can kind of help each other handle that pressure. You know, if one of them, they both delivered really well in China, but moving forward, if one has a bad week, the other one could do well. And I think having more than one, it means that the attention could be divided, and I think that might actually help them. But going back to the original question, do I think they have potential? Hell yeah, they're really good. And I'm not just saying that because they did well here. I watched them in a number of other tournaments. They were the pair that defeated Watanabe and Taguchi in their first tournament as a pair, and I think a lot of people focus mainly on the fact that Watanabe lost that match, but I was like, no, this Malaysian pair are really good. They're very organised, have all these skills, and I'm not surprised that the Japanese didn't beat them. So yeah, did they have potential? Yes, but it's going to be from now on, they've had the first big result. The pressure, they're going to gain a lot of confidence, but there's all going to come with the pressure and an expectation of what they're going to do next. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle that. So yeah, no, let's keep an eye on them for sure. What kind of trainings the Korean men's double team does that their pairs can change partners so smoothly? I don't have the intricate insights of the Korean training. I don't know how they do it. I know obviously the training is more centered around doubles. But the reason I chose to answer this question is I don't think it's to do with their training, because I think in most national centres, players will play with different people and be able to, will mix up partnerships to kind of make up games. So there's going to be a lot of that, a little bit of experience in the training hall of playing with different people. For me, there's two things. One, I think Korean have a lot of internal tournaments where they play, the stuff I already mentioned, that I watch the YouTube stuff, and they're always playing with different people. There's loads of different internal tournaments and team events and all this kind of stuff. And I think the national team selection processes for doubles, they have to play with everyone that's gone for the tournament. I don't think they just put in pairs. I think they have to play with a variety of people, and so your score is individual. So to even get in the team, you have to have that versatility. So it's no wonder that they're able to do that. On top of that, I think the Korean style is a little bit easier. It's more, everyone's kind of trained in the same way. There's less on the individual player. Well, there used to be individual player developing the things. I think it's more their focus training is on making the most basic, very solid player possible. So I think that allows for players to switch in and switch out and it to still work. I know for a fact in, like, say, Europe, pairs will train together because they'll be working on set pieces so much that those set pieces aren't going to work with everyone. Of course, if you're a really good badminton player, you can play with anyone basically, but I think with the Koreans, the fact that they have to do it so often in their internal tournaments, in their selection process, and just the way they're trained just allows them to slot in with different people a little bit easier. So that's why you're doing this. And also I think Korea also not adverse to, as we've seen, to changing them on the world tour, whereas I think a lot of the nations don't do it as much. So we just see it more with Koreans, so we have this thought on our head that they're just really good at it. So Seung had many difficult matches in the beginning, but in the end it was better. Why? Well, this is another easy question for me to answer. Players are always going to be more susceptible to losing or to not playing so well or having tighter matches early in the tournament because they're not used to the conditions. They're not used to where they are. So especially in a tournament like China, the conditions were quite tricky, so it will take a lot of getting used to. There can be a lot of matches that can get tight, and that can always lead to 3-game matches. For Seung, also in the first round, she had to play Ratchnuk, and we all know she's a fantastic player who's been playing really well. She's just been a bit unfortunate with her draws, and so of course someone like that can definitely trouble Seung. And then in the second round, it went to 3, but really Seung was leading the first game like 18-11 and managed to somehow throw it away and then won the next 2. And then from there, like I said, she was into the tournament, she was finding her rhythm, and I think she just played herself into it. She hasn't played many tournaments as well, let's not forget. She hasn't played much, so I think even though she's really good and that little lack of match practice, it just took a little bit of time for her to get going. I don't think there was anything too specific other than that, really. What's your opinion of the Danish clash? Surprised? Expected? So by this Danish clash, they mean the semi-final of Anders Antonsen versus Viktor Axelsen. Was I surprised? Was it expected? Well, I wasn't overly surprised that Viktor lost to Anders. Anders won the last tournament he played in Denmark, and he played really, really well. Viktor has been playing okay, but he hasn't been looking as fast, as strong, as sharp in the last few tournaments. Or he touched on that. People have been thinking that he's been getting ill, or he looks a bit injured, or whatever. Just doesn't look match fit. I wasn't surprised, because let's also not forget that although I think this is Anders' first win over Viktor in a few times, Anders has always been someone that's been able to be a tricky opponent for Viktor. I think with the way he plays, obviously they know each other inside out. So I'm not overly surprised. I think the match was long, but I didn't actually find it all too entertaining. Yeah, it got close at the end, but the match was a little bit bitty. Like I said, a lot of matches went like that, and even for singles, it didn't really seem to get into much of a flow. I haven't really got too much to say about it, other than that I wasn't surprised that Anders beat Viktor. Anders played again like he did in the final, a nice tactical game. What made it a little bit dull for me, well, not dull, but it wasn't just the fact that it was a little bit error prone and there wasn't much flow to it, but both players weren't really going for it as much as I thought they would, especially Viktor. Anders was more passive than Viktor, but Viktor wasn't going for it as much. And I think a big part of that was both players had a healthy respect for the fact that if they played a loose shot or they tried to go for an attack too early and their opponent was able to defend it with purpose, that then they'd be in a bad position. And then to control the shuttle was already difficult when you're in a good position, so the fact that they were going to be in a bad one meant that they didn't want to take on chances and put themselves in that sort of situation. So they ended up kind of playing a little bit this passive cat and mouse style, which is all good, well and good. I do enjoy that, but the match wasn't that exciting for me to watch. But was I surprised? Was it expected? Neither of those really. I'm not sure if it was expected, but it definitely wasn't a surprise, given how both players have been playing recently. Is the Anderson brothers duo working out better, and is it good for the long term? Well, for the long term, who knows? in the short term, in the 3 tournaments they played together, the first tournament was a first round loss for Anna's, but then he's gone and won 2 tournaments back to back. So, I mean, you could say, oh, that was because that's still the leftovers from his previous training with Joachim, but, you know, clearly for me, what's really important when it comes to having a coach or picking a coach is not necessarily the level of the coach, but it's the trust, the faith in them. Do you believe in them? Do you feel like they have your back? And that's especially true at the highest level. I did an Instagram post last week talking about this similar situation with Tunjung and her coach Hurley. There seems to be this real kind of trust and bond between those two. I believe Tunjung even calls him Kakak, which I think is older brother. So that shows the relationship they got. And here, Antonsen is actually with his Kakak, his older brother. So yeah, no, I think I had a few people when this happened kind of going, well, and especially after Viktor announced that he had employed Peter Gader, was they're like, well, has Anna's missed a chance here? Because, you know, basically implying Casper was not at the same level. He's not going to be able to bring out the best in Anna's and all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, well, no, because that doesn't really matter. It's, like I said to you, it's more about trust and faith and belief. And, you know, and Casper's going to have, you know, being family especially, going to have that real belief in Anna's and going to do absolutely everything for him. And he was also a very good player. So for me, and if he thinks anything like Anna's in terms of really thinking about the game, then that's going to play into Anna's strength of developing that tactical element. So I think Anna's made a good choice. I think I would have said that even if he hadn't done well in these last 2 tournaments, because ultimately it's his choice, and I think he's always going to be someone that picks someone that he feels he has trust in. He did the same when he picked Joachim, because I think a lot of people were like, well, you know, you could have had anyone else a bit more. You could have picked a coach that had a more lucrative career, has more achievements under their belt, but he went for someone that he knew would have his back and could bring out the best in him, and I think he's done the same with Casper. And yeah, in terms of long term, who knows, but the way Annas is playing and the way that he approaches the game and the way that he's really leveled up his professionalism and got rid of a lot of the kind of things that people used to flag him for, such as his fitness and his physicality. Yeah, no, so I think this is a good choice, and long term, let's just wait and see. How long before Watanabe Taguchi become a solid looking pair that will make it through the first or second rounds? Again, all these questions that have like a definitive are looking for a definitive answer. I simply can't give you one. How long's a piece of string? It would be my reply to that. I do think they require a little bit more time. I've noticed with a lot of these new pairings, for the most part, that there is definitely some organisation, some synergy things that just need more time to iron out, to work out, more playing time together. And I think with Watanabe and Taguchi, it's requires even more time, because Taguchi's so young, so inexperienced on the World Tour. This is literally her first few tournaments at this level. So that's a lot for her to take, especially when she's got to play with someone so established like Watanabe. On top of that, when she was a junior, she played more women's doubles than mixed doubles. So there's also that factor that she needs to kind of get more experience in mixed, more experience at this level, and also be able to get more experience to be able to handle the pressure of playing with someone so experienced and someone with so many achievements. So that's a lot for her to take on her shoulders. So that could take a little while. Whether they're actually going to be a successful pair, again, I don't really know. We all know that Taguchi has got a lot of potential. I definitely, the matches I've seen her play recently, every single time she looks to get a little bit better. Watanabe, we all know, is a quality player, and I think he'll be able to adapt with the new partner once they figure out those things. But how long, who knows? I hope it happens soon. They've only played 3 tournaments together, let's not forget. And so I know we had like players like Dijapol and Supasara in their 3rd tournament together win a tournament. But everyone moves at their own speed, and I think the fact that Taguchi is so new to this, so new to mixed and so new to the World Tour, means that it could take a little bit longer. But I do have faith. Again, I'm not 100% sure whether they're going to be successful or not. Who knows? You could say that about any pair, especially a new pairing, but they're definitely got potential. We'll just have to wait and see. I think the first few months in 2025, if by March, April, May kind of time, we should start to see them doing a few things. I'd like to see them go to some lesser tournaments. I know I think Watanabe will have to do that, but I think they're going to have to go to maybe all the way down to even some international challenge events or Super 100s and just gain more match play together, because I think that's really what they're lacking, and I think that would also, if they're able to win those and get through more matches, it will give Taguchi even more confidence in her abilities. It's quite a tough ask to jump in at the deep end with all the other factors that I've mentioned. So some people might already be giving up on them. I haven't. I think they've still got potential. I like to see them play some lower tournaments and really gain a lot of experience there. And how long, who knows, but let's just give them some more time. Okay, so that's all the questions for Q&A. I've actually got one more section because, like I said right at the start, this was the last tournament that had points going towards the World Tour Finals. So I'm going to quickly talk about who's qualified, who hasn't, surprise qualifications, surprise people that didn't make it, all that kind of stuff in the last section of this video. Okay, right, so like I just said, the World Tour Finals, the qualifications are now done, and I'm going to quickly run through all 5 disciplines and just give you my general thoughts on it. So let's start with the men's singles. I've got Badminton Talks, nice little graphic here. I'm going to put that on the screen. So for me, if I look at the men's singles, a very strong lineup. There are a couple of key people that are missing. Number one is the fact that what's quite interesting is that China only has one person qualified, and that's Shi Yu Qi. Li Shifeng, like I said, missed out only just as as Jonatan Christie was able to reach the final, which that allowed him to reach the final spot. If you notice here, obviously Viktor Axelsen is down at 13, yet he's qualified. That's because he's the Olympic champion, and if you're the Olympic champion or the world champion, then you get a automatic qualification to the World Tour Finals. But the men's singles is an incredibly strong lineup, lots of interesting matches. Whatever the groups are going to be, it's going to be tough. I can't really see any players of that where you want them in your group that it would make it easier. Yeah, you're going to have 2 groups. Obviously, Anna's and Shi Yu Qi are going to be the top of that, and then whoever comes into that, it's going to be really interesting. So, yeah, that's going to be a good one to watch. In the women's singles, again, for me, what's really interesting about this is that Chen Yufei, former Olympic champion and basically the top Chinese player, is not qualified, and that's because since the Olympics that she's taken a hiatus. She has a protected ranking, but she went off to Australia to study English, so she hasn't played any tournaments since then, which obviously has heavily affected her World Tour ranking, so she didn't qualify. Also not helped by the fact that Wang Ziyi and Han Yue qualified as 1 and 2. They did really well throughout the year. For me, another interesting person that I need to mention here is Aya Ohori. I said in the last video that she retired at the Kumamoto Masters, then I corrected that saying it was the China Masters, and I was wrong again. It's actually going to be the World Tour Finals, so that's going to be a nice swan song for her. She'll get to play in the World Tour Finals and go out at the biggest event, the year-ending event, so that's really nice. We'll get to see her play a few more times. Also really good to see that Thailand had 2 players qualify. They actually had a really interesting race. There was 4 of them that were all fighting for it. So you had Busanan, Supanida, Pompaway and Ratchanuk, and it was Supanida and Busanan that got the final spot. I think Busanan was always quite safe, but Supanida really kind of managed to kind of clinch it with the semi-final result at the China Masters. Like I said, Tomoka Miyazaki did have a chance to potentially qualify and overtake her compatriot and former 2-time world champion Akane Yamaguchi, but she fell in the semis. She needed to make the final to be able to get into that final spot. So still a great year for Miyazaki. She's only really just started in the last second half of this year, started playing on the bigger tournaments. So that's really good. I think next year, if she's able to have a similar year, we'll see her at the World Tour Finals. A real talent for the future, she is. In the men's doubles, for me, this one's really interesting. There are so many good pairs. Of course, there were going to be some pairs that didn't quite make it. But if you look at the position 8, 9 and 10, that's some big names that won't be making it. So you had Kam Min Hyuk and Seo Kang. Obviously, Kang wouldn't do it. He's at the military service. But They're the world champions. Then you have the world number, I believe they're world number ones actually, Liang Wei-keng and Wang Chan. Really interesting for them is that they lost in the second round to Gautama and Isfahani in China, and it was that result that made them unable to qualify. There were some question marks as to why they didn't play in Japan, because probably if they had, they would have had enough points even if they had lost at similar stages. So that's quite interesting because China, these World Tour finals are going to be held in China, so the fact they only got one pair and their top pair haven't qualified is quite a big thing. And then Takura Hoki and Yugo Kobayashi, former world champions, are also been unable to qualify, even though they had a good run in recent tournaments. Again, just like Victor, Li Yang and Wang Qilin are qualified because they are the Olympic champions. They have, obviously Li Yang has kind of retired. Wang Qilin's been playing with a new partner. As you can tell, their points are way down because they're actually number 39 on the list. But some people might think, well, will they actually play? But yeah, no, I think that Li Yang and Wang Qilin are going to play. And I'm really excited to see how they play. Obviously, Li Yang hasn't, I don't know how much he's done since the Olympics, but Wang Qilin's been in really good form with his new partner. So I think the fact that they could just rock up, no one knows what to expect, could actually help them. It could also do the flip side. But yeah, overall, this tournament, the qualifiers, super strong. I know I spoke about the three pairs that didn't quite make it. They're also really strong, but there's some, it's very difficult to see how that tournament's going to play out. I mean, I have to touch on Gautama and Isfahani. The fact that they started this year in a position where they couldn't even qualify for Super 750s and they finished the year qualifying for the World Tour Finals, that shows that they've had a great year. Also, I know that they are independent players. They're outside of the national tournament, the national team, and I don't know. You can fill in the gaps here. Whether that's through choice or whether that's because they just weren't good enough to make the team, because we all know how strong Indonesian men's doubles is. So it'd be interesting to see off the year they've had, looking a little bit further ahead to next year, whether they're going to be invited into the national team or whether they'll kind of have a situation like the Daddies where they're independent but they train within the national centre. So whether they might do that as well, who knows? But regardless, that's too far ahead. Congratulations to them on qualifying, and I think they could do okay. But it's going to be a really, really interesting men's doubles at the World Tour Finals. Moving on to the women's doubles, what's quite interesting for me is it must be really hard to be a Chinese player. I mean, you've got Li Yijing and Luo Zhumin, who were the pair that got to the final of the China Masters and have had a great year. This shows to you just how good a year they've had. They finished third on the World Tour rankings, yet they haven't qualified because Chen Chen and Jia Fan, who we haven't seen since the Olympics, get the spots because they are Olympic champions. Obviously, there's a big question as to whether Chen and Jia will actually play, and for me, I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't heard anything otherwise. But if they were to not withdraw, I think that theory is going to get stronger, the fact that they would be replaced by a Chinese pair. So who knows whether Chen and Jia take that spot or whether they give it to Li and Luo. That's to be seen. I have to talk about, obviously, the two pairs that qualified 7 and 8 of Kusuma and Pratiwi from Indonesia and Jolly and Gopichand from India. Obviously, I know of Jolly and Gopichand quite well because of their exploits at the All England. They've always seemed to do well there. Plus, they've had some big wins over big pairs like Baek Ha-na and Lee So-hee this year. I have to be honest, I haven't heard much of Kusuma and Pratiwi, although I think I see their name keep popping up. Obviously, they've had a very consistent year qualifying. You have to have had. They played the maximum number of tournaments, but so is pretty much everyone else on that list. So the fact that they were still able to get in ahead of a lot of other established pairs is pretty impressive, and congratulations to them. I think also, looking at the way it's going to split, obviously we don't quite know what's going to happen with the groupings. No one does yet. I think the big question, the big interest for the women's doubles is whether Chen and Jia are actually going to turn up or whether they give that spot to Li and Luo. And it's a similar thing as I move forward to the last event, the mixed, because the world number one pair, the pair that just won the China Masters, the pair that have won or got at least the last four finals of the last four tournaments they played, Feng Yanzhe and Wang Dongping have not qualified. And that's because Zhang Zhenbang and Wei Yajin have had an absolutely phenomenal 2024, playing a lot of tournaments but also doing incredibly well. Obviously Feng and Wang only played 11, so they had 3 more tournaments they could have played, and I think maybe with that they could have also come in at number 1, but regardless, the reason they're not qualified is because Zheng Siwen, Wang and Chong have automatic qualification because they are Olympic champions. They're all the way down in 29, and it's a similar situation to Chen and Jia in the women's. Will they play? I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I think they're less likely to play than Chen and Jia, and I think for the same reason as the women's doubles, we might see them give their spot away to Feng and Huang. We'll have to see how that pans out. Also, I have to say, look at the other, if you look at the top 10, the top 9, there's 2 other Chinese pairs. That shows you just how good Chinese mixed doubles is. The fact that they've got, and it also shows that their badminton is in a healthy state for the mixed, as it is for all disciplines within China, to be honest. Really, other than that, there isn't too many other pairs that I look at and I'm surprised that they aren't there, or they didn't make it, or are qualified. I am quite interested to see Kim Won-ho and Jung Na-yun, because like Zheng and Wang, they're the Olympic silver medalists, and they haven't played a tournament together since, I don't think they have anyway, since the Olympic Games. And I do know that Kim Won-ho and Jung Na-yun are now focusing on their doubles events. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they obviously probably will play. How good they're going to be and the level they bring is a bit of an unknown. It's quite interesting. So yeah, it's a good mixture of countries within the mixed doubles. But yeah, no, just like the women's doubles, I think the big headlines of that are going to be whether Zheng and Wang play, and if they do, how good are they going to be? I think that will take most of the headlines heading into those World Tour finals. And with that, that's the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. A massive thank you to you guys that are still here. I know this has probably gone on for a long time. There's so much to talk about with the China Masters and the World Tour finals and all your amazing questions. So if you have watched this far, then thank you. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed making these Beckman breakdowns. I'm going to continue into 2025. I've still got at least 1 more episode of it coming this year. That's obviously going to be the World Tour finals. Then there's also one other event that I might cover as well. I'm not 100% sure I will. Or actually, no, I am 100% sure I will. I just don't know the exact dates of when the tournament is, but I believe it's in December. You can try and guess what that one is, but it's a big event and a very exciting one, and one I definitely want to talk about. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to end this video here. I've gone on for far too long. Thank you again. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, get in the comments, let me know what you think, your own opinions, as well as obviously just all the kind of things that I most likely overlooked or whatever. Okay, until next time everyone, see you later.